The MLS preview is here, and this video is for the Eastern Conference. And listen, let me first explain how this is going to work. In this video, I'm going to start with a quick preview of how the MLS season will go, the new updates on how the playoffs is going to work, and everything else. Along with that, I will talk about every single club in the Eastern Conference for this video, and later in a few days, 2 or 3 days, we'll release the Western Conference preview. So if you were not able to follow through, we're going to get you a little bit of information for every team, so you kind of have an idea of how the MLS season will go. Throughout the video, I will have many different special guests. I'm putting all their links on the description, so please go subscribe, check their channel, Twitter, whatever it is. So don't miss out on that. With all that said, welcome to the channel. I'm Filippo, Tactical Manager. Make sure you subscribe. Hit that like button if you enjoy this type of content. And why don't we just get to it? And don't forget to hit the notification bell so you don't miss on the Western Conference preview and all the live streams we're going to do during the MLS season. The first one we're going to do is probably going to be Atlanta United versus Orlando City. With all that said, let's roll the episode. Okay, let's start the preview of the season, but before we start that, comment down below which team you believe is the best one for the Eastern Conference and which team you think is the worst one for the Eastern Conference, and give me one prospect I should watch out for this season, based on your opinion. So let's start by giving a warm welcome to Austin FC, the new expansion team of the league, with a beautiful jersey and a beautiful logo. Along with that, let's give a nice warm congratulations once again to Columbus Crew for their title of the MLS Cup last season, and Philadelphia Union for the Supporters Shield. I know many don't care about that, but congratulations to the Philadelphia Union as well. For this season, the Eastern Conference will have 14 teams, and the Western Conference will have 13 teams. Each team will play 34 matches total during the regular season, where 17 will be home and 17 will be away. The number one seed of each conference qualifies directly to the playoffs. Now, seeds 2 through 7 will also qualify to playoffs, but they will face each other prior to the bye round that the number one seed has. So the second place will face the 7th, the third place will face the 6th, and 4th will face the 5th. And that will determine the 3 teams that make it to the conference semifinals along with the first seed. Alright, so that's a quick summary of how the season will go. Hopefully you guys understood it. But before I start each single team, let's go through the important dates of the season. So the first important date is the season opener, and that's April 16th of 2021, obviously. We're talking about the 2021 season. Rivalry week will take place on August 20th to August 29th. Decision day will take place in November 7th, aka the last round. The MLS Cup playoffs will start November 15th, and the MLS Cup is set to take place December 11th at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Now you're all up to date. So let's start with every single team of the Eastern Conference, and I'll start with Atlanta United. And USMNTU Universe, thank you very much for helping once again with the Atlanta United content. Go give him a follow, guys, on Twitter. Great USMNT Twitter account and Atlanta United fan. With that said, let's start with Atlanta United. Last season, Atlanta United finished in 12th place, missing the playoffs in the East despite having 10 teams qualify. There are many different reasons for that, and one of them can be blamed on Frank de Boer, the other one can be Glass, Josef Martinez was injured, the loss of Gonzalez Pires and not signing a proper replacement as well. Miles Robinson got injured and did not come back the same during the season. Many different reasons, along with many signings not performing as expected. Now they have Gabriel Heinz as their new coach. I expect good things from him. I am expecting him to do a 3-defender formation eventually. I don't know if he'll start the season like that. I haven't been following through with that as well. But I think he will do a 3-defender formation because that's one way he does like to play, as well as releasing George Bello to be at his best, because I think George Bello can have a fantastic season if he plays as a left wing back. On offense, this guy is pure talent. Along with the return of Josef Martinez, this team is pretty much back on track at this point, along with some signings I'm about to mention. Ezequiel Barco as well is expected to play much better this season under Gabriel Heinz. The signings of Sosa from River Plate and Marcelino Moreno from Lanús could have a major impact right away in this team. They also have some other young prospects they signed, but I'm not going to get into that in this video. I think the momentum is shifting for Atlanta United, and they're expected to have a very good season. I don't expect them to win the Supporters Shield, as I do think they'll struggle a little bit in the beginning as the team gels together under a new coach, Gabriel Heinz, and the new signings and the return of Martinez as well. But I do expect them to make the playoffs very easily. I think they could easily be a top 3 on the standings of the Eastern Conference. And then in regards to the MLS Cup, I wouldn't be surprised if they won the MLS Cup. They definitely have a good chance, as by then, if they're healthy, the team should be with good chemistry and well set under Gabriel Heinz. All right, now Chicago Fire. And for that, I'm going to have Danny Dannyt Radio himself talk about it. And Dannyt Radio, you guys can go check him on YouTube. Great MLS channel. I love his content. And before we recorded, Ivanok from Chicago Fire was not injured yet. One of the signings he's going to mention. Now he got a knee injury and he'll be out for around 3 to 4 months. So Dannyt Radio does know that, but he didn't mention it because we recorded a few weeks back. I'm 100% sure his expectations on Chicago are a little lower with that injury. But let's just hear from Danny himself. All right, Danny. So why don't you walk us real quick? What happened last season to Chicago?
2020 went exactly how I thought it would go for the Chicago Fire. Brand new head coach, new system, figuring it out. You know, they got an interesting roster. I would probably rate it like middle of the pack to lower the pack. A lot of interesting pieces, but it took a little while for them to get going. Their biggest problem last year, honestly, was that they were just inconsistent. I mean, they beat the Seattle Sounders in the MLS's back tournament, and then the same tournament they lost to the Vancouver Whitecaps, who didn't even bring any forwards. So I think pieces are there for the future, but it's a lot of projects right now and not as many sure things.
And for the current roster, is there any young player you would recommend us watching out for?
Well, there's a lot on the Fire. I mean, from last year, bringing over, Mauricio Pineda, Aliseda, and then the new signings, they got Ivanov and Afor, I think that's how you say his name, two strikers to pair up with Robert Barrich. So those are the guys I'm looking out for this season.
Now, so you talked about these transfers. Out of the transfers you talked about, is there any specific one you have the highest expectations on?
Well, the only two that I really know of are the two that I mentioned. I think that's my biggest issue with the Fire right now. There was an article in MLSsoccer.com that said Coach Wiki was happy with his roster right now, and he doesn't see a lot of new signings coming this way. And while I can appreciate standing behind your team and wanting to build a core and not just throwing them under the bus like NYCFC did a couple weeks ago, really, like we're totally satisfied with this roster that didn't make the playoffs last year. So I would say the two up top, I hope they can produce, because if they can't, and if Barrich is the only one that's really scoring like he was last year, might not be good enough to make the playoffs again this year.
With that said, what are your expectations? Will you make the playoffs, fight for the MLS Cup, or not do well? What are your real expectations, your true expectations?
Well, they're a little bit lower than I would like them to be. I mean, again, second year under Raphael Wiki. Is that his name? Yeah, Wiki. Second year under Wiki. I would hope they would be a little bit higher, and they are for playing together a little bit longer. But again, just not enough done this offseason to build a stronger team. So I think they're capable of making the playoffs, but making a run at MLS Cup, I still think they're a few years away from that.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Danny, for your thoughts on Chicago Fire. We wanted to bring a fan to talk about it instead of me. I don't want to get called biased, even though I'm going to be biased a bunch of clubs, but thank you very much, Danny.
Absolutely. You have a good one, man.
Now, FC Cincinnati. And in 2019, they were the worst placed team in the league. In 2020, they were the worst one again. And now in 2021, they're going to get a lot better. And no. It's not just because of that beautiful new stadium they have. The team actually got a lot better. Let's talk about that. Their current coach, Jab Stam, will have a lot of work, as this current project is more of a long-term project. They will have 11 U23 players in this roster at the time of this recording. Zico Bailey, Alvaro Barel, Isaac Antanga are all young players to watch out for this season. But there's one name that comes to my mind that will make a major impact right away. It's their big signing for this summer. It's Brenner, that came from São Paulo in Brazil, their young designated player. This guy can score goals. He was scoring a lot of goals. He's so young and scoring a lot of goals in the Brazilian League. I can't imagine what he will do in MLS. Cincinnati also had the worst offense in the league last season with just 12 goals in 23 matches played, and I think Brenner can turn things around right there and will have a major impact right away, along with all the young talent that's around him as well. Trust me, it's a huge upgrade over De Jong. They also signed Argentine player Lucho Acosta, former DC United, and was playing at Liga MX last season, so he can have an impact right away as well, even though I would be more excited for the young talents that FCC has. The future looks bright. FC Cincinnati looks a lot better, and I think they'll do a lot better this season. I don't think they'll be in last, but I don't expect them to make the playoffs. I expect them to have a much better season, and I'm very interested to see how these young talents will blend in, how they'll do together, and how they will go for the next few seasons. 2 to 3 seasons from now, this team's looking very interesting if they can keep this core. All right, now Columbus Crew. New season, current champions, new stadium. They did not really lose any big names during this offseason in their roster, but they made a few good and interesting additions. Molino comes from Minnesota United after having some very hot playoffs right now, scoring 4 goals in 3 matches. Bradley Wright Phillips, a veteran that will add depth to the team as well, while Zardes will continue to be their go-to guy when it comes to goals. Alexandru Matan comes in as a young, interesting prospect. The attacking midfielder is 21 and was playing very well at the Romanian league. Arthur is still there, Nagbe is still there, Pedro Santos. The team is very good. A player that I'm looking out for this season, honestly, there's actually two players that I want you guys to watch out for. It's Abubakar Keita and Aiden Morris. These are two players to watch out. I think they can do very well this season. They might not start right away, but I expect them some good things from these young guys. So what do I expect from Columbus Crew? I expect them to defend their title. I think they can fight for the MLS Cup very easily. They could win it. I don't think they're the favorites. I'll get to that. But I think they can win the MLS Cup once again. They can also win the Supporter Shields. I think for the Supporter Shields, they might even be the favorites as they're more experienced, more in their prime. They average around 28 years of age in their team, and they're the oldest roster in the league. But not old by any means. Just veterans that know how to win. So I expect them to fight for the title of the MLS Cup, and they are one of the favorites to win the Supporter Shields as well. Okay, we're going fast with this video. Hopefully by now you guys hit that like button and comment down below the best team in the East and the worst team in the East in your personal opinion and the prospect to watch out. With all that said, let's get to DC United. So last season, DC United finished second to last and was the worst defense in the Eastern Conference, allowing 41 goals in 23 games. They did sign Brendan Hines, Ike, to see if they can help fix that, but most certainly he's not the solution to their problems. Paul Arriola left, but now he's back, so it's the return of the ones that never left. He will likely miss the first few weeks as he recovers from a thigh injury. Steve Birnbaum had an ankle surgery and will miss most of March and probably another 2 to 3 months. Veteran goalkeeper Bill Hamid is coming back from a hernia surgery, so he could take some time to pick up good form, but he's already practicing currently. An interesting player to keep an eye out for is their new signing, Nigo Roberta, a forward that comes in from the Bulgarian league, where last season he played 19 games and had 6 goals and 6 assists. With all that said, their new coach, Hernan Lozada, will have a lot of problems to deal with early on that could drag on later into the season. So I don't expect DC United to do very well this season. I don't expect them to make the playoffs. They could honestly even be the last place team or one of them, because Cincinnati will probably be better than DC United this season. With that said, I'm sorry DC United fans, I didn't mean to offend, I'm just trying to be realistic here. A lot of injuries, a lot of problems coming into the season. I don't have high expectations. Alright, so Inter Miami, they're no longer an expansion team. And last season, they made the playoffs benefiting from the expanded playoff spots that they had 10 last season. We don't have that anymore, we have 7. And let's see how Inter Miami will do this season. Last season, their main problem was actually scoring goals. They only scored 25 goals in 23 matches. However, David Beckham has no problem investing and spending money, as they are currently the second most expensive team in the league, only behind LAFC. Now for this season, they will have Phil Neville as their new coach and Jason Kreis as the assistant. What can go wrong? In regards to this season, maybe the biggest departure will be Will Trapp that headed to Minnesota, but reinforcements did come in, such as Ryan Shawcross from Stoke City, Gregory that came the defensive midfielder from Sport Club Bahia at the Brazilian League. That's a good replacement for Will Trapp, to be honest. There were more signings, but we gotta keep going with this video. A young player to watch out is Edison Ascona, the 17-year-old left winger. He's very talented. We saw in the Olympic qualifiers him playing for the Dominican Republic. Very talented. Watch out for him. Probably going to be at the bench regardless. I mean, they have other superstars in this team, but I expect him to get a few minutes, and you guys will see how sneaky and how the flair this player has. He probably won't start over Pellegrini. That's what I'm trying to say, but he should get some meaningful minutes eventually throughout the season, especially with a tight calendar. I expect a better season from Higuain, Matuidi as well, and Pizarro will have a key role. But due to only having 7 playoff spots this season, I honestly don't expect them to make the playoffs. Yeah, I don't expect them to make the playoffs. They benefited from the last season. I don't think they'll be much better. They do have some young talents that you want to watch out for, like I said, Pellegrini, Edison Ascona, but I don't expect big things from this team. And no, Break Shea is not the GOAT. Let's just stop that. I know, you guys probably didn't say that, but I've heard it before. Alright, now CF Montreal. Yes, that's the name. And for that, I'm not going to talk about it. Why don't we bring an expert instead? So for this segment, we're going to bring ZoneCFMTL on Instagram. Guys, go give him a follow. Great Instagram account. Please go check out his account. Let's hear what he has to say about Montreal this season. So Giancarlo, why don't you go through with us real quickly what happened last season with Montreal?
So basically, last season was obviously Thierry Henry's first and only season at the club, back when it was still known as the Montreal Impact. Obviously, he had very tough times in his managerial career before with Monaco, and the expectations with him coming in was we expected him to build something on a long-term project. He said it himself coming in. It wasn't supposed to be just a one-year project. It was going to be maybe 2-3 years. And basically, it took a bit of time for the team to adapt to his system. He wanted to play out from the back. We had trouble at first doing that, but towards the end, you could see that his philosophy was really coming through. Unfortunately, he won't be able to continue this year for family reasons. He had to leave the club. He wasn't able to see his family. And this year, head coach is Wilfried Nancy. It's his first year as head coach. We've recruited a lot of young kids. Besides that, we only have one designated player, Victor Wanyama. He had a strong start with us last season. Unfortunately, as the matches kept rolling on back-to-back, he would never ever get a rest. He would always be in the starting 11. You could tell that he would get tired, and it would show on the field that he wasn't always, giving us 100%. So we need more from him because he's our only designated player. Our MVP last season was Romel Kyoto. Hopefully this season he can keep up that form because we got him from a trade from Houston before the beginning of last season. This year it's the top 7 clubs out of 14. So do I think we have what it takes to finish in the top half? Honestly, I don't think so. I think we'll be in that fight until the end. But I think this year is really going to be the start of a new project with Nancy. And hopefully in future years we'll be able. But this season, unfortunately, I don't see us making that top 7.
And Giancarlo, little bonus section for everyone here. As a fan, what are your thoughts on the name change? One sentence, very quickly.
I like it. I
like it.
Yeah,
that's all I needed to hear. All right, John, thank you very much.
Now Nashville, and I'm going to bring Eli from This Week in MLS to talk about it. And guys, go check out his YouTube channel as well as his Instagram and Twitter as well. He's everywhere. Eli's just everywhere. So go follow Eli. Let's hear what he has to say about Nashville. He is an MLS expert.
All right, Eli. So Nashville last season made it to the playoffs in 7th place. So if it was like this year's format, they would have made it as well. They also defeated Inter Miami, if I'm not mistaken, in the first round. What are your thoughts on Nashville? How far you not on that actually? Let's skip that. First, tell me last season if they underachieved or overachieved.
They definitely overachieved in a sense. They had the pieces to actually be a 7th seed, but it never felt like they were the 7th seed in the playoffs. They were the definition of defense wins playoff matches, not necessarily championships, but playoff matches. They got past Inter Miami. They got past Toronto FC in a shocker. And things are looking up for them heading into the season. Do I think they're still a playoff team? They're on that bubble. They did add a guy like Rodrigo Pinheiro, who is a great young Uruguayan winger who I think could potentially break out for them. But otherwise, you look at the roster, it's pretty much the same thing as last year. They want to build off their success. Walker Zimmerman's obviously still there, won the Defender of the Year. So, Nashville fans should be pretty excited for where their club's at. They're at least going to be competitive.
And is there any young player you want us to watch out for in that team?
Young player. Like I said, Pinheiro, he's young. I believe he's like 21 years old. Randall Leal, he's still young. I would probably consider him. He's like 23, 24 now, and he should break out even more this season. He's a designated player, so there's high expectations there. Alex Moyle of the New York Red Bulls. He's 24, 25. He is looking to have another successful season. But they don't really have the young talent that some of these other rosters do. They have a lot of great veterans like Dax McCarty, like Anibal Godoy, CJ Sapong, who they added. But the player that needs to step it up the most this next season is Hani Mukhtar. They're number 10. He's their DP, the German guy. He looked great at times, but he also looked really, really sus at times. So if anyone needs to step up this season, it's got to be him.
All right, so Randall Leo, he's an interesting player. He played in the CONCACAF Olympic qualifying, caught my attention for Costa Rica, I believe he was playing. Yeah. And what I'm going to go with here now is the star player is Zimmerman, right? We can't go with anyone else. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. There is no other option here. He is a star player. Oh, another name that I forgot is John Durkadiz, who is a designated player who they brought in. He's a striker, and he did not play like a designated player striker when they brought him in. He became a super sub off the bench. He's got to step it up as well. I think if Cadiz and Mukhtar could be the guys that they are on paper, Nashville could be a top 5 team in the East for sure.
All right, so that was actually, you answered my last question. Eli expects if the players work out well, they could be a top 5 team. So you do expect them to make the playoffs?
I'd say they're definitely in the conversation to remain a playoff team. I don't think anything's a guarantee, especially with teams like Atlanta getting better. So that's just something to take under consideration. But yeah, they should be in the bubble for sure.
Thank you very much, Eli. All right, now New England Revolution. And again, we're going to have Eli from This Week in MLS, and he's going to talk about New England. I did not feel like talking about New England for obvious reasons. Yeah, I just didn't want to be biased. Let him talk about New England. All right, Eli, now New England Revolution that unfortunately they knocked out Orlando City, so I don't feel like talking about it. I'll let you take from here. Why did they overachieve last season? What happened?
They did not overachieve. Okay, so they were the 8th seed, right? But they should have never been the 8th seed. The reason why they were so low was because Carlos Heel was out for the majority of the season. But as you saw, when he was healthy and on his game, the Revs were practically unbeatable. And I'd argue him and Bo are arguably the most unbeatable duo in all of MLS, plus a supporting cast around them. Their whole back line is made out of super draft picks, which is amazing for me as a super draft advocate, but also they were all so good. Matt Turner, in my opinion, is the best goalkeeper MLS. Sorry, Philadelphia Union fans. I think Andre Blake won the goalkeeper of the year because of a narrative, not because of stats, which Matt Turner definitely beat him in. But the Revs didn't overachieve, in my opinion. They were right where they should have been throughout the whole season. You can never doubt a Bruce Arena squad.
Now, out of this current roster here, I want you to name maybe one young player that you're excited for. Then we should look out for him.
I go to Syracuse University, so I'd be very biased here, but I got to go Tajon Buchanan. And sorry, my dude, but like he absolutely bitched Nani in the playoffs as the right back. He was fantastic. He's an attacking-minded player, played striker in college, played right back in the playoffs, and was so good for the Revs. You know, he could do it all. He scored the winner against the Philadelphia Union. This is my young player to watch for sure.
And he was actually impressive for Canada in the Olympic qualifiers as well, Buchanan, playing a more offensive role for them. Now, the star player of this team, in your opinion, most valuable player in this team?
It's the duo of Gustavo Bo and Carlos Heel, but obviously I got to say Carlos Heel because he was the difference maker come the playoff time. Sure, Gustavo Bo scored that game winner against the Montreal Impact in the 95th minute, but like he wasn't in that position if it wasn't for Carlos Heel and Carlos Heel feeding him throughout the playoffs, so it's got to be him.
And now, non-biased, even though you're not a New England fan, but you're very excited for his team, what do you expect from them this season?
Well, I don't think they'll be the first seed in the playoffs. I think Columbus has that first seed in the East pretty locked up already. I think the Revs can make a run to the MLS Cup, but if history repeats itself, they will not win the MLS Cup. You know, they've been to the Cup 5 times and have never won, and I would definitely see them making that type of run.
Thank you very much, Eli. All right, now let's talk about New York City FC. Last season, New York City FC made it to the playoffs and got knocked out by Orlando City at the quarterfinals in perhaps the craziest game in soccer history. I won't get into it too much. You all remember Rodrigo Chaligo. You all remember Pedro Galese getting a red card during the penalty shootouts. Pareja pretending he doesn't know the soccer rules. That was just a crazy game that Orlando City ended up winning in the penalty shootouts. It was just crazy. We did a live stream for it. Let's keep going. They signed Chris Gloucester for the left back position, and Alfredo Morales is arriving for the midfield, which should have an impact right away. But besides that, nothing very significant. Same goes into regards of departures. Skyly left, but that's also not a major blow in the short term. So essentially, it's the same team as last year. I have to say, maybe with their current roster, it would be best if attacking midfielder Morales, after a disappointing season, stayed at the bench. Now, I'm looking forward to seeing Keaton Parks this season and James Sands, how they will perform. Along with that, let's see how Castellano performs. Castellanos was linked to Palmeiras in Brazil and a couple other Brazilian teams, but he didn't go. He stayed. He's a very dangerous forward, so I expect good things from him this season for New York. With all of that said, I expect New York to fight for a position in the playoffs, maybe a 7 or a 6 seed, but I wouldn't be surprised if they miss the playoffs. So I'm going to say that New York will be at the borderline of making the playoffs or missing it. That's what they're going to be. They're not going to be comfortable if they make it, and I wouldn't be surprised if they don't make it. But they're not the worst team in the conference. All right, now the New York Red Bulls, and for that, Dustin, our producer, will be talking about it as a New York Red Bull fan. But before I get to that, let me catch you guys up on how they did last season. Last season, the New York Red Bulls made to the playoffs as the 6th seed and lost the playoffs to the Columbus Crew, the current champions, 3-2 at the very first match. Besides that, Columbus Crew did not concede any goal during their playoff run, so that shows that the New York Red Bull offense has potential. Before we get to Dustin, apparently New York Red Bull is very close to announcing Frankie Amaya from FC Cincinnati. So at the time me and Dustin recorded, that transfer was not official. It's actually not official right now, but it's supposed to be confirmed very soon. So Dustin doesn't talk about Frankie Amaya, but I can assure you he's very excited for the signing. Another young prospect for New York Red Bulls. It's looking pretty good for the season, honestly. All right, now let's hear it from Dustin about this season. All right, Dustin, as a New York Red Bull fan, so the New York Red Bulls this season, they have a very young roster. They're 23.6 years of age. That's the youngest roster in the league. What would be one or two young players we should watch out for in this team and why?
Well, I think the first one is pretty obvious, Caden Clark. I'm expecting him to be our number 10. He's only 17, about to be 18, I believe. So that's extremely young. Yet again, he's showing so much talent and so much flair. So that's a player that not only New York Red Bull fans are excited, but also USMNTU fans. So that's one player. Another player that I believe that he might bring something to the table. I'm not sure though, because he does not have professional one-tier experience, but Cameron Harper, he's coming from Celtic. Celtic is known for being the best club in the Scottish League. So that's another player that I'm interested. And to be frank, I don't know much about him because I don't think there's even videos where you could see the youth Celtic Academy on YouTube. But that's a player that I'm extremely excited to see. And also Yearwood. Yearwood's 21. He's British. And just bringing that European mindset will definitely help our American players.
Well, and now with these young guys there that you mentioned and many others, because it's obviously the overall roster is young. How do you expect, which veterans you expect to lead? Which veterans would you say is the most valuable player of this team to hold it together so the season doesn't go up and down too much?
Well, yeah, I do know that a lot of Americans might not like Aaron Long because he could be a little shaky on the defensive part of the field. And even for New York Red Bulls, he has shown a lot of shakiness. However, he is still by far one of our veterans, along with Daniel Royer, which is our captain. And he does bring the USMNTU experience. So I am expecting both of these two players to perform and to lead the way for our young squad.
All right. With all that said, what are your expectations for the season? Playoffs, no playoffs, maybe fight for a trophy?
Well, basically what I've seen over the past years is that New York Red Bulls philosophy has changed. Back then, we used to bring these expensive veterans such as Thierry Henry, and they would help bring trophies to New York Red Bulls. However, I feel like our philosophy has shifted to developing players. For example, we have Caden Clark that might end up moving to Europe. I think he's actually already confirmed that he's going to go to Leipzig. But anyway.
It might be.
Yeah. So we do have this new philosophy. So I'm not expecting any titles, anything like that. But I do want them to challenge for that playoff spot. So as long as they could do that, that will be a great season for me as a fan.
All right, now the team I wanted to talk about from the beginning of the video, Orlando City. Last season, Orlando City made it to the playoffs as the 4th seed. They had a good run, but we lost to New England at the conference semi-finals. Now for this season, one major loss we had was Daryl DK, and we haven't really properly replaced him. I'll talk about that very soon. There is a slight chance Daryl DK could come back, but with his success at Barnsley, it's looking more and more likely that he'll stay in Europe. Maybe at Barnsley, or maybe move to a bigger league, but probably not going to come back to Orlando City. We did sign Van der Water, a winger that comes from the Dutch league, which I'm not sure what to expect by him, as well as Alexandre Pato, which I expect absolutely nothing. I expect nothing from Alexandre Pato. It's been just terrible the past few years for him. He's not a replacement to Daryl DK as well. Now, we do have quality players for the MLS standards, and I see Galezi as one of the best goalkeepers in the league. Nani is still very effective. Chris Miller could be one of the best players in the league and have a fantastic season. Benji Michel can be very useful. Junior Russo, Antonio Carlos, Yuri Roussel. To me, again, the most important factor is Oscar Pareja. Oscar Pareja completely changed Orlando City. We were the laughingstock of the league, and when we got Oscar Pareja, everything changed. Now we're a very competitive team and very well respected, and we are undefeated against Atlanta United the past 3 games. I'd like to point that out to all the Atlanta United fans so they don't forget that. Now, a player to keep an eye on this season is probably Pereira. What I want to talk about this, many don't know, Oscar Pareja has tested Pereira in the preseason as a center back as well, a right center back. So we could see Pereira play as a holding midfielder and a center back this season. This will be very interesting. The versatility of the young American, no longer Colombian, now he's American. But that's a player to keep out, the young player I would like to watch out for Orlando City. With all that said, I expect Orlando City to make the playoffs fairly comfortably, and I think semifinals of a conference or maybe even conference final is very reasonable. But I don't expect Orlando City to win the Supporters Shield or the MLS Cup, but the playoffs is a must. We're getting to the end of the video, so now let's talk about Philadelphia Union. And before we get to that, please hit the like button if you made it this far. Last season, the Philadelphia Union were able to win the Supporters Shields and then lose to New England at the very first playoff round, which was a big upset at the time. For this season, they lost no one less than Brenden Aaronson and Mark McKenzie. That is not good at all. McKenzie was one of the best defenders in the league, if not the best center back in the league last season. In my opinion, he was the best one, if not at least top 3. Brenden Aaronson was one of the best midfielders and best players in the league. Stuart Findlay was a signing they made for the center back position, along with young center mid Leon Flatch that came from Bundesliga 2, but honestly, none of them will be able to replace Aaronson and McKenzie. Now, they have brought in players from their academy, which has been very successful in the past, and I'm looking forward to seeing Paxton Aaronson, the brother of Brenden Aaronson, performing. They're saying he's just deadly on the goal-scoring end. We did do an interview with him at the channel, so if you missed that, go to our playlist, Interviewing Legends, and you can see there the interview with Paxton Aaronson and Brenden Aaronson as well, but if you're interested in Paxton, go make sure to check that out. Veterans like Montero and Andre Blake will really have to be in their A-game all season long, along with Martinez, who has a fantastic last season as a holding midfielder. We'll keep an eye on him. I think he will be very useful to protect the back line. Now, I still think this is a playoff team. I still think they can make it to the playoffs, but it won't be as good as last season. They probably won't win the Supporters' Shield, but I think they can get top 7. So I'm going to say this is a playoff team. Maybe 6th or 5th place. Maybe 7th, actually. Playoff team, but not comfortable qualification. It will be tough. Guys, last team of the video, Toronto FC, and we're going to have Josh from JJDTV talk about him. He's a big fan of Toronto. He lives in Toronto, I believe, as well, or nearby. He's from Canada. So let's hear what he has to say about it. Along with that, make sure you hit the notification bell and the like button so you don't miss our Western Conference video as well. And comment down below the best and the worst team of the Eastern Conference and a prospect you're expecting to break out this season or that you truly like. But let's hear from Josh about Toronto FC.
All right, Josh. So Toronto FC last season, they qualified in 2nd place in their conference and lost to Nashville in the very first round, which was an upset. They were the top seed. What happened last season?
I mean, the boys had a great season. I mean, they found a system that worked. They have just natural raw talent, and it was a pretty pleasing season to watch through Toronto FC. In my opinion, it came to the bitter disappointment in the playoffs. They were, in my opinion, a better team than that Nashville squad was, but there was something special about that Nashville squad, and I had a bit of a bad feeling going into it because it was their first real experience in the MLS playoffs, and some of these players who came from Europe didn't really know what they were getting into, and the Magic kind of took themselves away with an excellent defensive performance, and they nicked it in extra time, and all in all, it was really just a season that kind of could have been for Toronto. So I think that really it was something that kind of put a bitter taste in our mouths and hoping to get back on it this year.
And with that, let's go to the second question. Is there a player we should watch out for in Toronto this season that you expect maybe a breakout or maybe just an intriguing player?
Akinola, for sure. I think you guys all saw last year some of the numbers he was putting up. He made a dynamic duo with Pozuelo, and they've really looked good together. I think that he's going to just keep growing as a player, and I think when Josie Altidore is kind of slowing down, I think Akinola is really going to take this main striker role onto his own. He had good numbers last year, but I still think he can find a little more consistency to his game this season, and I'm hoping that this is a real breakout season where double digits should be hopefully the goal target for him.
Maybe get 15 goals. That would be something interesting for a young striker.
Absolutely. That was literally the number that I was going to say.
Is he better than Josie Altidore?
Right now, I'd say yeah. I mean, he's our starter. I think Josie's done so much for this Toronto side, but I think that his time is kind of, especially with like injuries and whatnot, is going to be a little more restricted role this season, and Akinola hopefully can just take that main role all for himself.
And who's the most valuable player in this roster, the most important player that if he gets injured, you guys are in trouble?
Pozuelo, for sure. I think he's done so many fantastic things. I mean, he got everybody's attention when he came to this league and did that Panenka goal, and he did it a couple times. And he plays that number 10 role just like a number 10 should be played. And the link-up play with Akinola was fantastic to see. So I think he's just going to keep growing on his love here and his game here in the MLS, and hopefully can have another great season for Toronto FC.
And what are your expectations for this season in regards to accomplishment, coaching staff, players? What do you expect from this team?
I mean, I'm a little nervous with the new manager coming in. I mean, we've had so many good years under Greg Vanney, but I think that he's done some good things at New York Red Bulls, and hopefully that we can figure out a system that works for the personnel we have. And in my opinion, this TFC side should for sure finish in the top 3. And then for playoffs, anything can happen, as we know, but the goal, in my opinion, should, I mean, obviously playoffs, but I think this is the top 3 slide, and that's where we should be.
All right, guys, you heard it from very special guests. You heard it from me. Obviously, we're not able to cover every single team in detail. We try to give you a more broad view of what's going on in the MLS this season. Hopefully, I added some value. For that, I want to thank you all very much for watching. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, hit that damn notification bell as well. The Western Conference video will be out very soon. I want to thank you all very much for watching. Thank you for all the support you guys have been giving, and have a great day.